All right, this video is looking at how elasticity affects equilibrium. So if you recall, when we talked about supply and demand separately, we talked about elasticity and elasticity of demand and elasticity of supply. Now, believe it or not, elasticity also impacts equilibrium, which makes sense if you think about it because, hey, equilibrium is made up of supply and demand. Now, elasticity of demand has a greater impact, and we're going to focus in on that more so than elasticity of supply. So first thing is that we have to talk about when something has an elastic demand and there's a change in supply. It's going to cause a very small change in equilibrium price. So first off, let's pick this apart. Let's think about this. Elastic demand. What does it mean to have an elastic demand? Well, if we have elastic demand, that means that we are very sensitive to a change in price. So we're very sensitive to a change in price, and so these are going to be things that you're going to price check around for. You're going to go price shopping and make sure you're getting the best deal. So what were some examples of things that had an elastic demand? So maybe you're thinking of electronics, right? So phones, TVs, computers, right? Those things that you're gonna, price check around for. Cars, houses, okay? You're gonna go price checking, you're gonna find the best deal, okay? But here's the thing is that if the supply curve changes as well, it's gonna cause equilibrium price to change very little. And here's why. So I'm gonna draw a graph. So remember what I told you in class. I draw a graph, you draw a graph. So when you're drawing this, make sure you're very careful with how you're drawing your demand curve. Your demand curve should almost be completely horizontal. And look how mine is, it's almost completely flat. And then you put it in a regular old supply curve. Okay, so for example, let's say that this is for something like cars. Okay, so let's say this graph is for cars. Cars are fairly demand elastic. We price check around. And let's say it's for a specific car. Let's say it's for Toyota cars. Now here's why I said Toyota cars. A number of years ago, there was a big, huge tsunami that hit Japan. And as with many Japanese companies, Toyota was greatly impacted by this tsunami. And what happened particularly was, and I remember hearing this and thinking about this, and I was just like, wow, that's interesting. Toyota has actually a lot of factories throughout the world, that they make Toyota cars. Obviously, they make some in the United States. But for some reason, there are particular brands, particular ones that, models, I should say, that they make in Japan. And at the time, if I remember, I think it was black cars that they actually made specifically in Japan. So when this tsunami hit, all of a sudden, all of these factories were shut down because of the tsunami, and they were shut down, and it caused this left shift in supply of all these black Toyota cars. Now, here's where what I want you to pay attention to is that, yes, it's a left shift in supply. So we know that when we have a left shift in supply, the price is going to go up. We know that. But look how very little the price went up. Okay, going from my equilibrium here to my equilibrium here. The price changed very, very little. And again, that makes sense if you think about it, because if we know that it's a demand elastic item and we're going to be very sensitive to change in price, they're not going to change the price very much. The price of those black Toyota cars did not increase much. Why? Well, because they knew people could just go and buy other cars, right? So they didn't want to really rock the boat, so to speak. So that's what happens when you have an elastic demand curve plus a change in supply, and it's going to cause the equilibrium price to change very, very little. However, if we're talking about an inelastic demand curve and a change in supply, it's going to cause a very large change in equilibrium price. So again, let's think about, okay, what does that mean, inelastic demand? Well, inelastic demand means that we're not sensitive to a change in price. So these are going to be things you're going to buy no matter what. You're going to not price check around because it's going to be, hey, I got to buy it. I don't really care what the price is. Well, I kind of do, but you're going to buy it no matter what. So can you think of things that are inelastic demand? Stuff you're going to buy no matter what. Things like gas, things like insurance, like car insurance, health insurance, things like prescription medication, EpiPens or insulin for diabetics. Those are all inelastic demand. They're going to buy it no matter what. So when you draw it out, what happens is that, okay, remember, I draw a graph, you draw a graph. When you're drawing an inelastic demand curve, it should be almost completely vertical. Look how steep my demand curve is. And then I'm putting with a regular old supply curve. So then what happens is that, okay, when our supply curve moves for whatever reason, so for example, let's say this is the graph for EpiPens. Okay, did you know that there was fairly recently only one company that made EpiPens? One. Okay, that's a huge left shift in supply because there was very few companies. There was very few companies' number of sellers, right? So yes, the price went up. Just like when we talked about the black Toyota cars, the price went up. But look how much the price increased. Okay, price increased a lot. Why? Because they know that you're going to buy it no matter what, right? You don't have a choice. So anytime there's an inelastic demand curve and then the supply curve moves for any reason, it's going to cause the equilibrium price to change a lot, okay? So please make sure that you understand how the elastic, inelastic demand curve impacts the equilibrium when there's a change in supply. All right, that's it for now. Thanks for watching.